Welcome aboard Free Dive with Seapoint Digital, your go-to podcast for deep dives into the world of digital marketing. I'm Christy.
And I'm Anna Lynn.
Your hosts navigating through the currents of growth, strategy, and innovation in the digital realm.
We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. It's going to be a good time.
Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Free Dive podcast. On today's episode, we have a very special guest with us. We have Kerry Struble from Birch Blaze Studios. We're so excited to have you here and to have a conversation with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start off by talking about what your business is.
Yeah, so my wife and I have a portrait photography business, Birch Blaze Studios, and we specialize in several different types of portraiture, family portraiture. We also do headshot and branding portraiture, so more slanted towards business. We used to photograph a lot more weddings. I take a handful of weddings still that tend to be more local and maybe smaller, and dabble in video a little bit as well lately. So
You do it all.
yeah, well, try to.
So when you started out, so how many years have you been in business?
So going way back in the 2000s, 90s and the 2000s, I was a graphic designer, and in the 2000s, I've always loved photography, photograph the kids and all of that. But later on, in doing the graphic design, I started doing photography for some of the clients, like very boring, like product photography and things like that. And so when Taylor and I met, she was interested in photography. So we decided to start something along those lines. And we tried some different things. We tried some photography in the hospitality industry, food photography, and then we finally settled on wedding photography. And at first, neither of us, I think, was super interested in that. But then we realized, especially with wedding photography going into the digital age, a little bit before that, there was a lot of creativity that could be had with weddings. And so we started shooting weddings. And, back in those days, you could just put up a website and you would start, if your work was okay, you would start booking weddings. We also did family portraiture at that same time, most of it outdoors. And then I'd say 2 or 3 years ago, we started transitioning from weddings and portraiture to just portraiture.
Nice. So you built your own website. So you've been basically handling your own marketing throughout the years too.
Yes.
As you've gone into different forms of your business as well. So you've been really, I think that's a really important skill, especially when you are taking on the marketing aspect of your business and the behind the scenes kind of stuff, is having that flexibility to pivot your business and go in a different direction if you're finding that it's an area that there's an opportunity to be had, to reach another audience. And also, if you just want to try something new. And so that ability to be flexible and to kind of rebrand yourself for a different audience is a really cool skill.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate in that I started off with doing graphic design. And, back in the 2000s, there weren't as many resources for, having someone design your logo or, now there's any number of websites that you can go and have.
You could get somebody on Fiverr,
Right, exactly. So back then I did, all the graphic design work. I still do. But it was nice to be able to have, that made it easier to pivot because you could come up with a new logo and throw up a new website, things like that. So yeah, it's been nice to have that background for sure.
Now, have you ever done any, as far as marketing, have you ever done any like print campaigns or any print marketing, or have you found that digital has been the best way to market yourself?
So when we started out doing weddings, And you still find wedding publications like regionally based wedding magazines. And so we did some print advertising in the beginning, but we never really found a lot of success in the wedding photography industry using print advertising. These would be the types of publications that would be left with wedding planners and at bridal, wedding dress shops and things like that. And so couples or brides would pick the magazines up and whatnot. So yeah, we never had a lot of success with that. And then I would say that that's been even more so as we've gone along, and print, like magazines and whatnot, is, I think, seeing more and more of a decline.
Yeah.
And so, we did more things like meeting people, like networking, connecting with other businesses in the wedding industry, like wedding planners and floral designers and things like that. Seemed to work really well.
Yeah, it seems like it would be hard to really encapsulate your work into print. Because you're probably limited in how many examples of your work you could add to something like a print campaign. And it can be tricky, I think, to really show the full scope of what you do in print form. So it does make sense that digital would be a better medium for you to use.
Yeah, that's true. That is something that I always had thought about, whatever print form you're talking about, usually you only are able to put one image. Yeah, so you're usually only able to put one image on a card. I mean, you could put multiple images, but you run the risk of diluting your message a little bit too. Yeah. But especially in a print magazine or something like that, and you're targeting more of a specific audience, you're limited to one image. And people tend to be very visual. So in other words, they have a hard time imagining something. So, but if they see it, that helps them imagine it. So an example of that would be in New Hampshire and Maine, barn weddings have been very popular. And so starting out shooting weddings, you're probably going to do a lot of barn weddings. But maybe someone in Portsmouth or Boston doesn't want a barn wedding.
Right.
But they go to your website and all they see is barn weddings.
Right.
They're going to be like,
they're not for me.
Yeah, they're not for me. And fortunately, so I don't know if you want to hear the story, but when we first started out, we shot a wedding of Taylor's cousin, and they were doing of all things, a Valentine's Day themed wedding. And
how romantic.
Everything was red hearts and
oh wow.
And so it was definitely not our style.
Yeah.
But it was the only wedding that we had to put anywhere, post anywhere.
Yeah.
So we put it on our website, and someone who was kind of pulling together a last minute wedding, fortunately, could see through the theme to the quality of our work.
Oh, that's neat.
And that couple, they were doing a beautiful lake wedding on Lake Winnipesaukee. And
totally different
vibe.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. We were so thankful that they could see through what we were posting, that that we would be able to document their day in an artful way.
Well, it speaks a lot to your skill.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are things you don't always think about. Not everyone is going to have that vision that they can say, oh, well, this is not my style of wedding, but I love the style of photography, and I want them to do it for me.
Right. So have you found, besides using a website, are there other platforms that you feel have worked really well to market your business?
So we've done a fair amount on Facebook. We've done Facebook ads. Facebook ads can be fairly tricky. So there's some experimentation involved. And of course, probably like most businesses, we follow like industry pages, photography business pages on Facebook that where people can come and talk about their business, their photography business with other photographers.
Yeah. Nice.
And so, you pick up tips and things like that. But yeah, Facebook marketing has worked well for us.
Nice.
We've had some swings and misses, but we've had some good responses as well. And obviously with Meta, kind of as an umbrella over Facebook and Instagram, when you run a Facebook ad, you have the choice of allowing that campaign to run on Instagram as well. So yeah, we've done, I guess you could say, both of those things.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Have you ever done like a particular promotion or marketing effort that you feel was particularly successful? Whether it was when you were maybe rebranding for a new audience, or whether it was promoting it to an audience that you already have established or that you're already speaking to. Was there anything that was a particularly successful marketing effort?
Yeah, so I mean, we've done similar types of promotions that some were successful and some weren't as successful. So I don't always know like what the mystery element was.
The secret sauce.
I can say that people often, when it comes to portraiture, as opposed to weddings, when someone's getting married, pretty much everyone wants a wedding photographer. And so in those early days of photographing weddings, pretty much you just needed to put up a website and you would start getting, booked. With portraits, they're a little bit different because people tend to feel like they need a reason to have a portrait taken. Yeah. Especially when it comes to studio portraiture. People aren't necessarily thinking, hey, you know what? Let's go down to the studio and get a family studio portrait.
It's true.
We live in a very beautiful area, so lots of people are coming up for vacation and they want to document those times. But some of the off seasons can be a little bit more challenging for a portrait photographer because not a ton of people want snow pictures. Right. It's funny about that because you can take a picture in the summer and it doesn't scream that it's summer. Yeah. That's not something that's registering with people. Right. But if you're taking a portrait in the wintertime and there's snow all over the ground, that screams it's wintertime. Right. Similar with, autumn with the colors. Yeah. But back to the original topic at hand. So some of the campaigns that we've done have been based on sort of giving people a reason to have a portrait.
I love that.
So families might think, we want to do a family portrait, and that's really the only reason we would go and have a portrait done. But we have had a lot of wonderful sessions with, for instance, mothers and daughters. And so maybe it's a new mother. It could even be a maternity session. But it could also be a brand new mother, a mother of a toddler. Each age range is a good reason to capture that. Yeah. We all know as parents, we know how fast it goes by. Yes. Right. And so, and we all have cell phones, of course, and we probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures of our family and kids on cell phones. The problem is that oftentimes as a parent, you're the one taking the picture.
Oh, you're speaking to my soul, Kerry.
And if it's selfies are cool, but it's not quite the same as, because you're worried about, getting in frame and all of that. So there's a lot of good reasons to have portraits done. And, among them, making sure that you're capturing those fleeting moments as your kids are going through different stages. So,
and you can't always depend on your spouse. Speaking as a mom, you're like, when you're out doing things as a family and you're like, hey, take a picture of me so people know I was here too. Right. The undocumented, invisible mom. Yeah. And then your spouse will take the picture and it's the most horrible picture of you that you've ever seen. And you're like, wow, yep, we can delete that one. Yeah. So I just love how true it is. Like, it's so important. I think especially for moms. So I can see why that campaign would be so good for you because you're tapping into a market where moms definitely don't get enough pictures with their kids where they actually like themselves in the shot. Right. So I love that you recognized that and you went after it, and it was and it worked out. It was great.
And I think too, you know, the age-old thing of kids responding to people that aren't their parents, maybe a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like if moms and dads are trying to get the kids together for a photo,
Oh yeah, forget it.
it's a struggle, right? But with Taylor and I, we pride ourselves on being very laid back and easy to work with. We like to have fun. We like to laugh. So it's very important to us to make sure that it's as relaxing as an experience as possible. I mean, picture day probably is stressful for a lot of people, but if you can find a photographer that you feel comfortable with and kind of puts you at ease, and also has that effect on your kids. Yeah. So, you know, we understand that kids hit a wall. Sometimes they need a few minutes to just shake it out and run around. Yeah. And we're totally cool with that. Yeah. So, and then bringing it back to like the actual campaign, again, you know, we'll do a campaign for mothers and daughters, and people will see a picture on Facebook and they'll say, oh, this is cool. Yeah. I hadn't thought of, you know, that I could do a photo of just my daughter and me or what have you. So those are the kinds of portrait sessions that people don't necessarily think of, but it kind of gives them a reason or at least a desire to want to do a portrait. So those kinds of, you know, promotions, while not always completely successful, but they generally have done well.
Yeah. And you must have people that come back to you year after year and you become their go-to photographer. Like if they've got a moment they want to capture, then they come to you. So are referrals, do you find that referrals and repeat customers based on, you know, campaigns that you've run that have been successful, do you find that has been a good source of marketing for you as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think back to when we were doing more weddings and we would photograph a couple. And when you think about being a wedding photographer on someone's wedding day, that's a pretty special thing to be able to do because someone essentially is welcoming you into their lives for that day.
Right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you are spending more time with them than like their family is because you're following them around all day, you know, doing their photos. And so, you know, and a lot of times we will have done an engagement session prior to the wedding, and we've met with them either in person or online. So we've developed a rapport with those people. And then on the wedding day, it just kind of, that relationships kind of gets cemented even more. Especially at the end of the day after they've had a few drinks, we're like their best friends. But
you've made them look good all day.
But seriously, so some of those you know, families or couples get married, and then a year or two down the road, we, you know, have kept in touch usually on social media a little bit, and they've had their first child now, and a second child comes along, and then we see their families growing. So we've watched families or couples that we photographed, you know, 10, 12 years ago, and their kids are in Little League now and all these things. So it's always really cool when we get to photograph a family that, you know, we photographed their parents' wedding, and now we're kind of documenting the growth of their family through the years. Cool. So, yeah.
You get to be a little historian.
Yeah.
A personal historian for the family.
And of course, it makes us, you know, always a little too aware of how fast time is going by, and we're like, whoa, that was 10 years ago.
Oh, it's true.
So, but it's cool.
That's so cool. Yeah. So do you have any promotions that you're doing right now?
So, not specifically. I'm pivoting a little bit in that, getting into some different aspects, more, I guess, niche aspects of portraits. One thing that I've started is sort of a satellite brand for sports photography or sports media. Yep. So I had the idea a couple of years ago, and we have a studio space in Wakefield, New Hampshire. And I wanted to do like very stylized sports portraits, particularly of young people. So something that you might see on a sports broadcast, like a Bruins game or a Celtics game where they introduce the players and they're up on screen. And I'll be able to offer that to kids, in the area.
How cool.
That maybe typically wouldn't have that kind of a portrait. They wouldn't have access to that kind of, someone doing portraits. So I've worked with lacrosse players, football, excuse me, hockey, volleyball, several different genres of sports. And that's been a lot of fun it's been very fulfilling creatively. And then to, see the kids when they view the image and wow, that's really cool. And they've probably, some of them have never had a portrait like that.
Oh, I love that.
So that's kind of an area that I'm sort of, like I said, pivoting to a little bit, getting more involved, or targeting like sports teams and leagues and things like that.
That's really neat.
So that's something that I'm working on. Also, I mentioned video earlier. It kind of goes hand in hand with that in terms of sports. I'm working with a hockey league in Wolfboro,
nice.
Back Bay Hockey, and a nonprofit called the Friends of Pop Whalen, which is a hockey arena up there.
Oh, nice.
And so they had an award show recently, and we did a series of interviews of kids that are now adults, but had gone through the, through that funnel.
Oh, cool.
Of being coached from a very young age, and then, going through the different levels of hockey. Some of them actually were drafted by NHL teams.
Wow.
They started in the little Wolfboro Hockey Association, and they've played on a national stage, some women's professional hockey.
Nice.
So we did a series of interviews with those individuals, and so those are the types of things that we're kind of spreading out in
that's so cool.
getting involved in now.
Have you ever had an experience? I'm sure it's come up. I'm sure it's happened, because you probably go into a session with kind of a vision for how the session will go, kind of an idea of what you want to do and where you want to go with it. What do you do if your client just has a completely different direction that they want to go in? How do you marry your vision with theirs?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So ultimately, we view our role as we are here for the client. So we want them to be very happy with the results. And whether even in the case of a wedding or, portraits that we're doing more of now, one of the questions I will ask ahead of time, and that's something that's key, is we do like a consultation or a planning appointment before the actual session, so that we can understand, what they're envisioning, what's their expectation. And so I'll ask, when we're done with the session and you're holding the prints in your hands, you're looking at the images, what would you be thrilled about? Like what would you love to see in those images? And that's a great opportunity for them to express kind of, maybe what they had been envisioning, or sometimes it's not even necessarily something that's very stylistic in nature, but it might be more like, oh, I just, my daughter looks at me a certain way, or we laugh with each other, and that's what I want captured. I just want the closeness captured between my daughter and I, or my son and I. And so with our photography, we're always trying to reflect emotion, so that even if a stranger looked at a portrait that we've taken, in other words, they don't know the person in the photo, our hope would be that photo, that portrait, would tell the viewer something about that person.
I love that.
Some little, even if it's on something intangible, they would learn something about the essence or the personality of that person. And we do get good feedback in terms of our portraits being like people connecting on an emotional level. Like, so, and that's kind of has to do with either the person connecting with the camera, or as a photographer, in a portrait session, maybe you're building a rapport on a much smaller level or a shorter amount of time than, say, with a wedding client that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, you have to get there quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
So being a people person in a way, and, like I love people and talking with people and connecting.
Yeah.
And so that connection becomes important when you're photographing someone, because I can learn something about you leading up to the point where I'm actually starting to take the photos. And then, hopefully I can direct you and maybe even start a conversation during the session that is bringing out something that I've seen or something that I know you want me to bring out.
That's great.
And so oftentimes the discussions tend to be more about that than the styling.
Yeah.
Our website shows a lot of our work. So typically people that come to us for a portrait have already seen our work. They know what it is.
Yeah.
And so they're coming to us and saying, essentially, we love your style.
Yeah.
We want you to do that for us. We want you to make us look that way or whatever. And so, and then within that, there are stylistic considerations. So people might, I don't want someone to come into my studio and dress completely differently.
Right.
And then, or maybe they don't normally wear a lot of makeup. And and some of our sessions, we offer professional hair and makeup. So
that's cool.
We don't, and it's generally just about getting someone camera ready, evening out skin tones.
Not
and things
making them look like they don't.
Right. If someone doesn't wear much makeup or no makeup, we don't want to all of a sudden do this glam makeover on them so that they or their friends and family don't recognize them. Who's this person in the picture? So we want people to be true to themselves. We want their wardrobe or outfit, their styling to be representative of who they are. And, maybe they'll kick it up a notch or two style-wise for the portrait. But we can also do, someone comes in, we'll do a more glammed up version or a dressier shot.
Yeah.
And then we'll do jeans and t-shirt in the same session.
That's cool.
So just so that they can have a variety and we can cover a lot of ground stylistically.
One thing that I love that you do, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, you were talking about your branding photos or portraits that you do. And I think it's so cool that your part of how you market yourself is to help other people market themselves.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what's involved when you do branding portraiture for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes people, when they come in for a headshot or a branding shot, they'll know, what they're trying to convey. But really with any kind of a headshot or branding shot, that's the point. You are trying to convey something. Oftentimes a headshot will be the first time someone sees what you look like because we do so much interaction online these days. So when you're looking for a therapist or an attorney, a real estate agent, you're, Googling for who's available in your area. And
do I like their face?
Yeah, sometimes, you like to think that it's
trustworthy.
Right. I mean, there's other factors that come into play, but
we're visual people, like you say. So we want to see.
Exactly.
We want to see them.
So, part of the planning process is, who is your target market? What do you want? What kind of a communication or what do you want to convey to them? Do you want to come across as very professional and maybe a little more serious? Do you want to come across as very friendly and approachable? Like a therapist probably would want to be approachable and friendly and welcoming and warm. Yeah. So, having those conversations will help us to be able to get them where they need to be in that regard.
Oh, that is so cool. So one last question for you. And this one is kind of for Bill.
Okay.
Because he's our AI nerd. Do you see any aspect of your business where AI might contribute to any kind of success you might have, either in marketing yourself or in what you do?
It actually already has.
Whoa, he's going to love that.
It's a really interesting question, artificial intelligence when it comes to the arts, photography.
We've had a lot of discussion about it in the office.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, the film industry, it's a very controversial thing, and rightly so. People are concerned about how their likeness is going to be used in the
Right.
future and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing about writers
Yep.
and all of that, right? You know what I'm talking about. So as far as photography goes, I mean, there's some great AI tools that have already been released within Photoshop. You know, as a photographer, I use Photoshop a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, there used to be, well, let's say there's a reflection in someone's glasses, as a very simple example.
Yeah.
It used to be that, and I still try and be very careful about avoiding that during a session.
Right.
But sometimes it's unavoidable.
Yep.
And so you can actually, you know, mask out a little reflection in some eyeglasses. And there's a function in Photoshop called generative fill.
Yeah.
And so I will mask that reflection out and hit generative fill, and it will give me 3 choices of replacing that reflection with whatever.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And you can even get specific about it. You know, like you can include prompts, like word prompts and phrases.
Very cool.
Which is been very, very helpful. You can actually mask out a person, so isolate a subject, and completely replace the background.
Wow.
So maybe I photograph them on a field or on the beach in Rye, and now I want to place them on a Parisian in a Parisian cafe or something like that. I can do that
with AI.
With
AI,
AI,
these AI
yeah.
tools. And
So
wow.
I don't normally want to go that far, but it's fun to play with if you need to. Like with some of the sports photographs, you could, you know, I photograph typically in a studio, and then maybe I photograph a hockey player, and now I can put them in a hockey arena with
that's cool.
stadium lights behind them and things like that. So that's been awesome.
Very cool.
On the other hand, there are apps where you can have a headshot done using AI.
Yeah.
And so
I've seen a lot of that on LinkedIn, like people talking about it.
So that would obviously completely negate what I do.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's some inevitability with any kind of technology, you know, robots, whatever it might be, people get replaced and they get, you know, things like that. As far as like AI headshots, let's say, usually it's, you know, you find a good picture of your face, and
which somebody else already had to take.
That's true. That's true.
Even if it's a selfie, someone else had to take it.
Right. Right. And then, you know, AI creates this stylized, you know, image from it. I find that a lot of them are a little bit cartoony.
Yes.
And
I've noticed that too.
Which can be cool. That could be a cool
if
effect.
That's your vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you're an animator and that's right up your alley. But I think just, you know, hiring a professional photographer.
Yeah.
Some of the things we've already talked about, like that connection.
Yeah.
Like my goal is to bring something out of you.
Exactly.
Which you're not going to get that with AI. So I think there are pros and cons. It's going to be very interesting to, you know, follow along and see where it goes and where the photography or the creative industries go as a result of AI, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming here and talking to us about all of this. I love what you do. I love what you guys are putting out there in the world. And it's so everybody, Birch Blaze Studios, Kerry and Taylor Struble, look them up, find them on Instagram, find them on Facebook, and check out their website.
Thank you. Yeah.
So people can find you, because you do beautiful work. We've had you come in and shoot for us a couple times, and for our website photos, and it's been great. So,
well, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
It's great to hear about how you're marketing yourself and how what you do is a link and a piece of what other people use to market themselves as well. And so I just think it's an interesting perspective, and a great example of how marketing can be successful in ways that people might not think of or
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Associate.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and I love what you guys are doing. And I love the podcast so far, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
We'll probably have you back. I have a feeling this won't be the last time you're on.
Thank you.
Well, and we'll see you guys next time.
It's the end.
No, it's not. There's more.
There's always more.
Don't be sad. You can catch our full video interviews on our YouTube channel. Come find us.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends so that we're not sad.
And follow us on TikTok.
And Instagram.
It'll make your day happier, promise.
And we'll know if you do. Until next time.